A couple of days ago, I made the case for the Somua SM Tier 8 Premium tank that is an auto loader, and I compared it against the flavor of the month, which is the Dropbox T77 American auto loader. Now, today I'm going to show you a gameplay from the T77 played by a good player. Now, how do I know this is a good player? Well, you're going to be able to see just from the way they move their tanks, the way they position themselves, and the way they focus down targets. Now, this T77, in case you didn't know, it was in the Halloween boxes. I'm assuming it will come to, it will go into sale sometime at some point into the premium shop for real money, but we don't know when that's going to happen yet. Now, you see our friend here in the T77, he knows where to get the first shots. Now, the T77 has a 3-shot autoloader versus the 5-shot from the Somua, but the 3-shot autoloader here does 390 per shot versus the Somua that only does 300 per shot. Although they share the similar kind of penetration for standard ammo, which is 232 standard ammo, standard penetration, the T77 has got much higher premium penetration. It has 299 millimeters of penetration versus 263 in the Somua. So you are talking about a very high penetrating gun, which means you can, one, make a lot of credits when you're fighting similar tier tanks, tier 8 matchmakers. You're going to make a lot of credits because you can just fire standard shells, no need to bother about premium shells, because 232 penetration on standard shells is pretty good for tier 8 matchmaker. But when you are matched into tier 10s like our friend here in this game, in this matchup, 299 penetration, you're not afraid of tier 10 tanks at all. Now, you can tell he's an experienced player. Why? Because in a tier 10 matchup, although this is like a 3, 5, 7 matchup where you only have 3 tier 10s on the enemy team and your team, but being in a tier 8 tank, you still cannot be hyper aggressive. You cannot take the point. What I mean is you cannot be the point man. You cannot be the guy in the front taking all the damage and blocking all the damage and doing the brunt of the work. Now, this Conqueror here well and truly fucked up, and he got himself stuck there, tracked, and he was dead. Now, what is he doing? He is signaling to the other guys to fall back. Do not be aggressive. He's telling everyone to fall back and play it safe. Why? This is like I said, this is a good player. This is a sign of a good player. You know that when you are in bottom tier, lower matchmaker, you gotta play it cool. You need to bide your time. You need to slowly chip away at the enemy's HP pool. And then once you have a HP lead and you have a tank lead, that's when you start to pounce. You do not want to be extremely, you don't want to overstretch yourself. You don't want to overextend yourself. He gets a little bit mad here at the FV4202 because the FV4202 also tried to get some side shots there, but end up blocking our friend here in the T77. Now, what are the advantages of the T77 autoloader? Well, one of its main attributes, like I mentioned earlier, was the penetration. High penetration standard shells, high penetration on premium heat shells, just like the Somua. But what else does it have that that it has an advantage over the rest of the other tanks? Example, Emil 1951, which is also a 3-shot autoloader, and IS-3A, which is also a 3-shot autoloader with the same alpha. Well, not the same alpha, it only has 360 alpha. The Emil has 390 alpha. The IS-3 has 360 alpha just like the T77, but what advantages does the T77 have that it's really good? Well, like I mentioned, number one is the penetration. Number two, it has a little bit of mobility, 48 kilometers an hour going forward. Going backwards, it's terrible, only 12 kilometers an hour, but 48 kilometers an hour makes it a lot quicker than a Somua. Somua only does 37 kilometers an hour, slightly faster than an Emil 1951, which does 45 kilometers an hour. So you have a little bit of forward speed when you need it. Now the power to weight ratio isn't that great, 16.33, in line with the heavy tank. Just like any other heavy tank, it is not supposed to get to that 48 kilometers an hour forward speed very quickly with that 16.33 power to weight ratio. So don't expect it to be like how do you say, quick on its feet, or agile. That's one thing that it is definitely not. Well, what else does it have that is really good or better than anything else? Well, it has this is what sets it really apart, 2-second intra clip, which means it can fire the 3 shots in 4 seconds. You fire the first shot, and then 2 seconds later you fire your second shot. 2 seconds later you fire your third shot. In 4 seconds you can deal 1080 potential damage. So the 2-second intra clip is a lot better than the Somua, which has 2.25 intra clip. So you expect to do well when it comes to a T77. So when I compare the Somua to the T77, really, to be honest with you, the two tanks play ever so slightly different. Yes, they are autoloaders, but remember the Somua is a 5-clip autoloader and the T77 is a 3-clip autoloader with higher alpha and a quicker intra-clip reload. So it unloads its 3 shells in 4 seconds, while the Somua unloads all 5 shells in 9 seconds. So that is the difference. Although the Somua has 5 shots and does 1500 damage versus the T77 only does 1080 damage, but the T77 does it in 4 seconds, while the Somua takes more than twice the time it takes than the T77. So you need to think about how these two tanks play here. They are the same, but not exactly the same. You know what I'm talking about? So here you go. Again, although we are leading 2 tanks, but you can see our friend here telling his teammates to slow the gameplay down. Why? Because if you want to do a lot of damage, you really especially in a bottom tier gameplay, right? You somehow need your team to not perform too well. Do you get what I'm trying to say? If you are in an autoloader that reloads every 38 seconds, during that reload time, you don't want your team to be doing a lot of damage to the enemy teams, because if they do a lot of damage, they're going to eat into your potential damage. So when you are in an autoloader and in a bottom tier, you cannot play aggressively, and it is very rare that you can even get a high damage game, especially when you are not top tier, when you have tier 9s ahead of you, when you have tier 10s ahead of you. It only happens if your team is kind of shit, kind of bad players, inexperienced players. You want them to not perform so well so that you can perform well, if that makes any sense, which is exactly what our friend here is doing, and he's just taking his time to reload. Like I said, the T77 is an autoloader. It takes 38 seconds for it to reload. The only tank that is in the same league as this T77 was the last tank that I showcased in this channel, which was the Somua SM. The Emil 1951, you could say is quite close performing, but the IS3A is nowhere near the performance of this autoloader. Why? Because the IS3A number one has 0.44 dispersion. 0.44 dispersion is just nowhere near the kind of performances that you can get out of the T77. Excuse me, I didn't mean 0.44 dispersion. The IS3A has it does have 0.44 dispersion. I was going to mention also the Emil 1951 that has 0.38 dispersion, which is exactly the same as a Somua SM. So the Somua SM 0.38 dispersion and the Emil 1951 also 0.38 dispersion means the accuracy is not as good as the T77, which has a 0.35 dispersion. 0.35 dispersion is very competitive, is actually very good dispersion for a heavy tank, especially a heavy tank. Imagine a T77 0.35 dispersion. Once you add Coca-Cola into the mix, once you add food into it, the dispersion comes down to 0.33. 0.33 dispersion is very good for a heavy tank, especially for a heavy tank that does 360 alpha per shot and can do 1080 damage in 4 seconds. So think about it carefully when you want to pick between a T77 or a Somua SM. It's very hard for me to say which one is better. It really depends on how you like playing your auto loading premium tanks. But this is an ace tanker, over 7,000 damage and over 1,300 spotting damage. Congratulations to this guy. He did really well, got an ace tanker for his efforts, and hope you enjoyed this video and learned something about the T77 versus the Somua, and figure out whether you really want a T77 or you really want a Somua, or are you gonna splash out the credits or the gold or the real money to get both these autoloaders, which are really fantastic in their own ways. Thanks for watching. I will see you on the next video. Bye bye.